You're listening to the Life Coaching Secrets Podcast, episode 243. Did you know that life coaches are needed now more than ever? I'm Frank Macri, founder of Thriving Coach Academy. I've trained over 1,000 coaches and helped them launch their own successful coaching businesses. If you want to make an incredible income and impact as a coach and have a lot of fun doing it, I'll show you exactly how to get it done. This is Life Coaching Secrets. What's up, coaches? In this episode, we're going to have a little bit of fun talking about the brain. Now, your brain is running your life far more than you realize. Every decision you make, every fear that you feel, every moment you hesitate or even move forward, it all starts in the brain. Not just your thoughts, but your emotions, your habits, your urges, your reactions. The brain controls everything from breathing and hunger to memory to motivation, even meaning. And together with the spinal cord, it forms our central nervous system, the command center behind all the choices we make. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the neuroscience of coaching. Right? If coaching is about helping people change their lives, it makes sense that we understand the system that makes change possible or difficult in the first place. So we're going to look at the neuroscience of coaching, how the brain actually changes, why resistance shows up even when you want growth, and what's really happening under the surface when a client gets stuck or when they get scared or when they suddenly get clear. Because when you understand the brain, coaching stops being so mysterious and it starts getting more precise. So before I go into this, I'll share a little fun story. When I was getting ready to teach English in China years ago, a lot of you know that I started my coaching, a lot of my coaching business took its roots when I was living in China. I taught English at a middle school. And in my spare time, when I wasn't teaching, I was studying coaching and attracting some of my earliest coaching clients. And it was so much fun to live out in China for a couple of years. But right before I left to move to China, I was getting ready. I didn't know anything about the language. I didn't speak any Mandarin. And I was living in Boston at the time. So I learned that at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, they were doing a study where they were looking at how learning a new language affects the brain. So they were paying people to participate in like an 8-week intensive Mandarin course led by an actual college professor. So of course I signed up. I wanted to be a part of science, but I also wanted to make a little bit of money and learn Mandarin because I was going to need it. So at the beginning of the study, they had us do an fMRI, which if you don't know, you're laying down and you're strapped in and they slide you into this like big giant donut shaped machine. And because it was an fMRI, they gave you this little like game controller with a couple of buttons on it. And I had to look at a screen and I had to click buttons based off of what was on the screen. It was like all these little games, like memory games or and it lasted for 3 hours. So I was in this donut shaped contraption for 3 hours, which was pretty intense. But long story short, after that, because they scanned everyone at the beginning, then we went through the 8 weeks of the class, and every day it was like 2 or 3 hours. It was really like they jammed in maybe an entire semester or 2 semesters in just 8 weeks. It was awesome. It was really great. And then they scanned our brains again at the end, and they published this amazing article about it of all the cool ways that learning a language stimulates parts of the brain that go dormant, especially in the adult years. So anyway, I digress. But I remember just being fascinated by the brain ever since that. And one of the reasons I love coaching is because it's like exercising your brain. I mean, there's doing physical exercise in the gym where you're strengthening your muscles. But I feel like coaching in a way is strengthening your mental muscle. And it's so important to have that piece. So the brain is a pretty complex organ, right? Because it controls so much: thought, emotion, memory, touch, vision, breathing, temperature, hunger. And I'm going to go through a few topics in this episode, and I promise you it's going to be very simple. I'm not going to go into anything that's too sciencey or too complicated. I'm all about keeping these really simple and just wanting you to understand certain terms that could be useful with your coaching practice, even if you're just looking to get into coaching. So the first is the term neuroplasticity. And for a long time, scientists believed that the brain was mostly fixed, kind of like how cement, when it's wet, it gets hard and it just stays like that for the entirety. So a lot of scientists originally thought like the brain just kind of gets to a certain point and then it stays as it is. But neuroscience has completely flipped that belief on its head, and now it's known that the brain is kind of like plastic, meaning that it is adaptable, it can change throughout your life. And this is called neuroplasticity. And it's this mechanism through which the brain actually rewires itself in response to new experiences and perspectives and new thoughts, even different physical movement you do, the environment you put yourself in. It all rewires your brain, and this happens throughout your lifespan. So you can think of the brain like this big network of hiking trails in a forest. And the paths that you walk most often become wide and clear and very easy to follow. And the ones that you stop using slowly grow over, like branches start falling, weeds start creeping in, and eventually the trail disappears altogether. That's how neuroplasticity works. All the thoughts and beliefs and behaviors that you use get reinforced, and the ones that you neglect, they get pruned away. So this is why neuroscientists will use the principle, use it or lose it. Maybe you've heard that expression before. Neural connections will grow stronger when they're activated repeatedly, and they will also weaken or fade when they're not. And that pruning process isn't a flaw, it's how the brain becomes more efficient. So why does this matter for us as coaches? Well, this is why coaching is not about just chit-chatting or venting with clients. It's such deep, meaningful work. As coaches, we're not trying to help clients just feel better after like a 45-minute session. We're actually helping them walk away with new mental pathways. Every time your clients practice a new way of thinking, they come up with a new rule for how they want to show up in their lives. They come up with new ways to respond to triggers. All of this work literally reshapes their brain, right? So understanding neuroplasticity, it allows us to realize part of what we do. We're not magicians here. We're not therapists. We're facilitators of change. And we're helping our clients access new perspectives until those perspectives stop feeling new and they start feeling natural. And this is why a lot of the tools that we teach in the academy is about, it's not just like slap on a positive thought and affirmation and call it a day. No, we need to actually have a process for being able to like embody those new rules and new thoughts and like honor the process of neuroplasticity. And that's why the rulebook coaching method we teach is so powerful, because that's exactly what it does, right? When coaches understand how the brain can change, then that's what allows your coaching to become so powerful and not like surface level, just motivational talk. So I want to talk about, now that we've covered neuroplasticity, the two parts of the brain that you must understand as a coach. Okay, the two parts of the brain. The two main parts are, I'm going to call it, the first part is the primitive brain. Some people call it like the monkey brain. Okay, there's the primitive brain and then there's the prefrontal cortex. Okay, so you can think of the brain as like two main systems. There's the primitive brain, sometimes it's also called like the limbic system, and that's focused on safety, emotion, habit. And then there's the prefrontal cortex that's focused on reasoning and perspective and intentional choice. So I'll first talk about the primitive monkey brain. This is the older part of the brain. It's very survival focused. It's just to keep you safe. It's to keep you out of danger, and it's to preserve energy. That is literally what it's there for. So this part of your brain doesn't care about your goals, your dreams, or your 5-year plan. It just cares about what's familiar and what's predictable and comfortable. So that's why whenever you do something new, even if it's something you want or something you know is going to transform your life, that's why it could trigger fear, resistance, and procrastination. Because to that part of your brain, unfamiliar feels unsafe, even when it isn't actually unsafe. Okay, there's like being literally in an unsafe condition, or there's just something that seems like it's emotionally uncomfortable. So that primitive brain thinks, danger, stay away. So all of this is about preserving what's safe, what's comfortable, and what will literally keep you alive. And there's a little part of the brain there called the amygdala. It's a little small almond-shaped part of the limbic system that's always scanning your environment for threats. And it's sending these fast little watch out signals. And that's what triggers that fight or flight or freeze response. So it's often been described as like the internal hypochondriac because it's quickly reacting to the environment. It's prioritizing whatever can give you immediate gratification or reward and pleasure, like that dopamine. And it's also the part of your brain that's responsible for urges and the impulses that like the impulsive feelings and desires you have, automatic reactions. So it's not where anything really thoughtful or intentional happens. And this is all what happens with the primitive monkey brain. Then there's the prefrontal cortex, and this is the more evolved part of the brain. This is where reasoning and imagination and intentional decision making live. And a lot of the tools that we teach in the academy, this is what your tools are helping people access this part of the brain, like overriding that monkey brain that's just focused on what's familiar and what's safe. How can I conserve energy, right? We're overriding that and getting in touch with the prefrontal cortex, which is where your life can actually move forward. Okay, this is the part of your brain that can actually see a new future and start questioning old beliefs and rules and actually choose a response instead of just having an automatic reaction. The prefrontal cortex is the planning part of the brain. Okay, it's the part of the brain that actually allows you to notice, okay, when like the amygdala is freaking out, it's able to say, okay, this is not life or death. You're okay. Even though you might feel anxious right now, you're okay. And this part of the brain is highly developed in humans. It's what allows us to learn and plan ahead. And it's what allows us to evaluate long-term risks and rewards and also access our willpower. So we're not just succumbing to every urge or impulse that you might have. It's what allows you to have this broader perspective. So in the work we do in Thriving Coach Academy, I often I teach this as the future self, right? The part of you that can step out of fear and look ahead and make decisions based on who you're becoming and not just what feels safe and comfortable right now. So the future self work is what activates that's what's happening. It's activating the prefrontal cortex. So you can think of it like this. The primitive brain is like the security guard, and whereas the prefrontal cortex is the architect. One's trying to protect the building as it is, and the other is imagining what it could become. And why does this again matter in coaching? Because one of the mistakes that a lot of coaches and even clients make is they assume that if there is resistance to something, it means that something's wrong. But most of the time, if you feel resistance, it's not a sign you're on the wrong path. It's just the primitive brain doing its job. Right? Coaching works because it helps clients shift out of the automatic survival-based reaction and into the part of the brain that can create choice. And when a client gains perspective and they start challenging rules, they start responding differently in ways they normally would, they are using the prefrontal cortex. And what happens over time is that becomes the new default. Now, as coaches, it's not our role to fight that primitive brain or shame it. It's to help our clients understand it so it stops running the show unconsciously. And once the client realizes, oh, okay, this isn't me failing, this is just my brain trying to keep me safe, that's when change suddenly feels possible instead of deeply personal. So when we talk about in our curriculum the future self, it's not like some motivational fantasy or some vision board concept. From a neuroscience perspective, this is about mental stimulation, like your brain actually imagining a future state and stepping into that perspective now. And having the capacity to do that is the role of our prefrontal cortex. Okay, when you are connecting to your future self, you're activating that part of your brain that can look beyond what's comfortable right now or what's scary right now. Because your limbic system, the monkey brain, is just focused on right now. What's going to give you pleasure right now or relief or safety? What's going to avoid discomfort right now? The future self is speaking the language of later. So what's going to allow you to grow? What will give you the most meaning? What feels the most aligned? What's going to have the most long-term payoff? Okay? So when your client is feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or they're resisting change, it's usually just because they're operating out of that limbic system, and connecting them to the future self, it shifts into the prefrontal cortex. And that's where choice actually becomes possible. It's like changing a camera angle, right? Instead of asking what feels safest now, the brain starts asking what's going to serve the version of you that you're becoming, what's going to serve that version of you. And this alone will help clients make decisions that actually align with who they want to be, not just what feels good in the moment. And that's why future-oriented questions are so effective in coaching. They're not pressuring the client or overriding the fear. They're just bypassing it by engaging in that part of the brain that's designed to think ahead. So let's practice this a little bit together, shall we? We're going to do a little bit of future self work. I want you to connect with your future self right now, right? So we'll do like a little visualization here. I want you to imagine that the future version of you, the version of you that is already thriving in their lives, achieved their goals that they have, I want you to start to see that version of you come into clearer focus. And for a lot of you, it might be some kind of goal that you have related to becoming a coach, right? So I want you to see this version of you that's not just like trying coaching, but the version of you that actually built something real as a coach, working with clients that they genuinely enjoy. I want you to see that future version of you that's getting paid extremely well to do this work, having a calendar that feels very intentional, and notice what success looks like for them. Not about hustling, you're not needing to prove anything. It's just about stability and freedom and confidence. And they really trust their ability to help people. They no longer question whether they're good enough to be a coach because their results answered that question for them and the results they see with their clients. I want you to now picture how money feels in the body of your future self. How does money feel? Maybe it's not stressful, but it's something that they're just very calm. When anything related to money, they're very calm about it. Bills are handled. Choices feel very expansive. And coaching allows them to support their life. It's not consuming it, it's supporting the life that they want to have. And this version of you that you're seeing right now and picturing, this version of you remembers what it felt like to be where you are right now, your current self, okay? So now that you have a image of your future self, you're starting to see that version of you, I'm going to ask you some questions to consider, okay? So what fear have you turned out? What fear turned out to be completely irrelevant once your future self started making real money as a coach? What fear turned out to be completely irrelevant? Maybe it was, you were afraid people wouldn't pay you, but you found the right people actually were relieved to invest in you. Or maybe your future self thought at one point that they'd feel like a fraud once money came in, but instead they actually feel like validated and like they deserve that. I want you to also think about what wisdom your future self would give you right now about some of the fears that you might have about coaching. Maybe your future self realizes that most of those things you were afraid of never actually happened. Your future self might remind you that your fear wasn't a warning to stop. It was just a signal that you're stepping into something bigger than your current identity. And think about what belief does your future self have to let go of? What did they have to let go of in order to move forward and get to where they are? What belief did your future self have to let go of? Maybe it was this overthinking about, am I ready? Am I ready? And just decided to jump in before they felt ready. Maybe it was to stop believing that other people were more qualified than them and just realize that you have something valuable to offer also. You have something that's worth bringing to the table and worth bringing into the industry. Maybe they released the belief that they had to figure everything out first before they got started. Or they stopped believing the idea that in order to be a great coach, you need a perfect life or like none of your own personal issues. They let go of the idea that you need to have a perfect life. What would your future self say about your ability to help people? Maybe they would remind you right now that you were always more capable than you thought, that you were enough long before you ever felt like you were ready. You were still enough. Or maybe they remind you that your ability to help people grew every time you showed up, even when you felt unsure. Your future self is so powerful because it has the wisdom that you don't yet have. And it's not because they're better than you, it's just because the wisdom comes from the lived experience. So your future self has already lived through the uncertainty that you're in right now. They've felt the fear, they made the decision anyway, they've seen how it played out, and that alone creates wisdom. And from a neuroscience standpoint, when you connect with your future self, you're again engaging that prefrontal cortex. And that is what allows you to have the perspective to move your life forward. Okay, your limbic system, the monkey brain, is just looking at how can I stay safe? Whereas your future self is asking what's really going to matter over time. That's wisdom. So every opportunity or idea that you encounter, it's an invitation to choose which voice you want to follow. And if you listen only to the fear of the present moment, you reinforce those neural pathways that keep you exactly where you are. But when you can listen to the wisdom of your future self, you begin acting in alignment with that person you're becoming, not the person you've been. So if you want to move into that future, you have to start letting that wiser voice lead you right now. Otherwise, the brain's just going to do what the primitive part of your brain's going to do what it's designed to do, which is just keep you doing what's familiar, keep you exactly where you are. Now, here's where all of it gets really practical. Even when we know how the brain works, even when we can access the future self, there's still that survival brain that doesn't disappear, right? It's still thinking of what's the worst thing that could happen. And there's a whole bunch of different cognitive distortions that happen, which are just ways in which the brain reacts under stress or uncertainty. And I'm going to go over the most common cognitive distortion. We teach our students about a lot more in the academy. I'm going to go over the most common distortion, and that is catastrophizing. That's when the brain jumps to the worst case scenario and it treats it like it's inevitable. So instead of seeing uncertainty as neutral, the mind turns it into this future disaster. So for an aspiring coach, it might sound like you thinking that if you were to, like, let's say, and get coach training or invest in a program, you might not get any clients, and then you've wasted all your money, and you prove that you're not cut out for this, and your whole life's going to be set back. Notice how many assumptions are just packed into that single thought, right? The brain skips over all the learning you're going to experience and the skills you're going to build, the tools you're going to have, the time you're going to put into it. It just leaps straight into failure. So when you can address your catastrophizing, this will help you make a much more reasonable decision forward, right? One question I always like to pose to the catastrophizing clients is, how likely is this really to happen? Like, really, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is it's guaranteed that this worst case scenario will happen, your whole life's going to fall apart, and 1 would be it's so unlikely. Where would you put that? And more often it's like given a 1, a 2, a 3. That's what clients are sharing. And this just helps the prefrontal cortex come back online, where it's like, oh, okay, now that we've calmed down the catastrophizing brain, now we can actually make a decision that is going to actually consider the long term. So another simple way to bring the prefrontal cortex back is to ask the opposite question. Instead of what's the worst case scenario, what's the best case scenario? Okay, what's the best case scenario? Now, the brain already knows how to imagine outcomes. It just defaults to the negative whenever there's fear. So when you ask about the best case scenario, it just balances the mental equation and expands what the brain considers possible, instead of just mentally rehearsing failure. Okay, instead of doing that, we're inviting the brain to rehearse success. So let's look at that with regards to your coaching goals. What would the best case scenario look like? Maybe it's you get coach training and you realize you're more capable than you thought. You start working with real clients way sooner than you expected. You are able to help people have breakthroughs. Your confidence grows quickly. You sign on paying clients. Money starts to become more predictable and come in, and you feel calmer about money, right? You build this momentum and you're able to really trust in your ability to help people and look back and realize that the fear was never about failing. Maybe it was just like this fear of becoming someone new. That was the only scary thing because you've become so successful. Now, I want you to hear that, and also maybe you also pictured other parts of your own best case scenario. What part of this scenario feels the most believable right now for you? What part of it feels most believable? And what qualities in you make this best case scenario possible? Like, what are the qualities in you right now? Maybe it's your eagerness to learn, your perseverance, your curiosity, your dedication to making an impact. You have so many qualities in you right now that I'm sure would make this best case scenario so possible. Maybe it's just like your passion for helping people, for really making a difference. So you have so many strengths and gifts that you are already using right now to really support this best case scenario and happening. So when you were able to really zoom out and look at everything that we covered here today, you're able to understand more of how the brain works, right? The brain is adaptable. Remember neuroplasticity is realizing that our brain can evolve and shift over time. We're not just stuck. You don't have to just keep repeating the same things. You can make new decisions. You can always have new thoughts. Your brain will always be able to evolve. Our limbic system keeps you in fear and resistance. So sometimes when you actually have like decisions in front of you and you notice the fear, it's helpful with clients or even yourself to use that language and say, okay, so the fearful part of my brain is telling me this, but here's what the more evolved part of my brain is realizing. That's a great way to make really empowered decisions. And that prefrontal cortex, in summary, it helps you see your choices and see perspective and tap into the future self. And all of this is why coaching works so well. Okay, it allows you to get out of that survival mode and into intentional thinking. When you can help your client access that future self and imagine best case scenarios, question the catastrophizing they have, you're doing much more than mindset work. You're helping their brain form new pathways to the point where those new pathways become the default. So this has been super fun to kind of peel back the curtain, look into the brain a little bit and see what happens, and how coaching is really a way of applied neuroscience in a way that moves you forward. It's super, super fun. All right, it's been fun to geek out over this with you. If you're loving this podcast and enjoying this, feel free to leave us a 5-star review. And it means the world when we get those reviews. Share this episode or this show with anyone that you think could benefit from it. And before I leave you, I'm going to include a little clip from an interview I had with one of our coaches. They've gone through the training and they're going to give you some of their tips for how you can thrive as a coach. So enjoy their story, and I will see you in the next episode.
My name is Jorge Alzate. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to retire from a 20-year career, and I was looking to see, well, what's my next move? And all along, for the past 14 to 15 years, I've been a member of Toastmasters. I've developed my speaking skills, my leadership skills in that organization. And I was at a meeting, I was speaking, I was on a panel, and someone came up to me after that meeting and they said, I really like the way you speak. You talked about being an introvert and being able to turn up the extrovert dial at will. I want to learn from you. And he said, I want to pay you so you can coach me to speak like you. This is like the universe calling, saying to me, all right, you've been coaching people on the side, you've been coaching people in the margins. Now it's time to do what you were born to do and make it your primary source of income, make it your business, make it your full-time job. So then I had paid for coaching before. I had done one-on-one coaching, and I reached out to that former coach, and I asked him for advice. I asked him, "What's one thing that you would know now that you didn't know when you first started out?" He'd been a coach for 9 years at that point. And he said, well, I wish that the program that I learned coaching from had taught you how to run a coaching business, because now he's starting from scratch after 9 years as a coach, running his own business. So that was the one thing I used to inform my research. And quickly, I looked up Thriving Coach Academy, and I saw some posts. I went briefly on the website. I may have heard a video too, but I was sold. I was sold on TCA. The way the program is laid out, it's very easy. It seemed like it's very easy to me for me to get to these steps, and it's so grounded in reality for me. The TCA community, it seems to attract the top 1% of humans. The support that I've gotten as in my classes, in the group coaching settings, everyone is so supportive and loving and open. I can see myself becoming a professional coach as my full-time job that allows me to get the income that I had before. And on top of it, I love doing it. I don't have to be anybody else except myself. My advice for a new student would be to come in with an open heart and an open mind, where you may have doubts or concerns. It's okay to let those around you know about them, because that's what the instructors and the staff and the fellow students are looking to support. So it's actually good to come in with doubts and fears, because when you work through them, those doubts and fears as a student, that will make you so much better coach. I've had incredible heart-opening moments through the support of the community in TCA, the staff, the instructors, the fellow students, the graduates. It's been amazing for me. I feel right now like not only am I on fire, but I'm in flight. And every time I look to the TCA materials, it's like that booster to maintain the flight. And I don't think I'm ever going to come down. I'm just going to keep firing. And a lot of that I attribute to the good fortune that I had finding the Thriving Coach Academy.
Hey, would you like access to powerful coaching tools you can use on yourself and clients right away? For being a listener of the podcast, I'm giving you a VIP guest pass to get a sneak peek into my coach training program. Inside, you'll learn our coaches' secret tool they use to transform their clients' lives. And you'll also get a training on how to launch a coaching business. Just head over to www.thrivingcoachacademy.com/VIP to get started. I'll see you on the inside.